Hello and welcome to another episode of the Losers Win Again Fantasy Football channel. I am your host, Jacob Brown, and we are here to talk about everything you need to know about wide receivers for the Week 1 NFL Draftkings slate. So let's get after it. Week 1 will be less than 2 weeks away by the time you're reading this, and we have a lot to cover, and I have all the info you need to build your bankroll this NFL season. After months of research and weeks of preparation for this Week 1 slate, this is what I found most important for you to know, so let's get after it. Knowing the implied team totals is a great first step into figuring out what type of game environments are projected. When thinking about the wide receiver position, you want a team with a high implied team total. For example, the Chargers have an implied team total of 27.75, the second highest implied team total on the main slate, which makes it clear you should have interest in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Take a look at the rest of the implied team totals. It is very likely these will update before Week 1 kicks off. Subscribe to my social media outlets for updates until the slate locks. I have a TikTok, Instagram, Patreon, and of course a YouTube channel. So if you'd be more than kind, if you like this content, hit that like, hit that subscribe, and that notification bell. Let's go ahead and look at these implied team totals. When looking at implied team totals, we got to start at the top here with the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Arizona Cardinals with a 28 implied team total for the Chiefs, and the over-under for this game being at a 53-point total. Definitely going to have interest in both sides of these teams. Marquise Brown for the Cardinals, Juju Smith-Schuster for the Chiefs. A lot of interest here in this back and forth matchup. You're definitely going to want to stack both of these teams up. Whether you got Kyler Murray at quarterback or if you got Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, you're definitely, or if you're just mini stacking, you're definitely going to want some players from these teams. Chargers and Raiders are the second highest implied team total, and Chargers got Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Joshua Palmer, and then the Raiders got the newly acquired Davante Adams, Hunter Renfrow. Definitely some options to keep an eye on as we're headed towards this Week 1 slate. Definitely going to have some interest in Michael Pittman for the Indianapolis Colts. Alec Pierce, the rookie that everyone's hyping up for season-long fantasy football. And also Paris Campbell, who's came back from an injury. We're hoping he's 100%. Then you get to the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings, one of my personal favorite games to stack this week. Aaron Rodgers pretty much going to have a whole new set of receivers, guys. I mean, Randall Cobb's back, of course, and you got Allen Lazard basically being the new number one receiver. Now, I don't think he's going to put up the same kind of volume that Davante Adams did when he was in Green Bay, but I think he's going to do enough to make it where we should be rostering Allen Lazard. I'm definitely curious on the ownership on him going towards Week 1. Then you get on the other side of this matchup with the Minnesota Vikings. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, who's super cheap, KJ Osborne, someone else we should be interested in. Definitely a game you should be stacking. Then you got the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's the usual suspects there. You got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, all three great options. I'm liking this game even more and more the more I've been doing these videos. Looks like a lot of great opportunities for cheap Cincinnati Bengals players. And you start looking at like the Philadelphia Eagles. They got a pretty good matchup against the Detroit Lions. They got the newly acquired A.J. Brown, and I think he's going to be pretty high owned. I think Jalen Hurts, the quarterback's going to be high owned. That'll be probably one of the highest owned single stacks. But you also got to look at Devontae Smith. I think Devontae Smith's going to go extremely overlooked because of A.J. Brown's presence on that team. But you got to think, aren't guys going to start double covering A.J. Brown? And is that going to leave Devontae Smith wide open? Devontae Smith is, of course, a tournament play only, but he's definitely worth taking some shots on. And when you look at the Detroit Lions, you got Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Chark, who I think is going to also be a great tournament play that's going real overlooked. Detroit's beat reporters have hyped up the relationship between Goff and Chark all offseason, so that's something to keep an eye on there. Then you move on to the Titans and Giants. I really don't have a lot of interest in this game on the receiving side. I know that the Titans got Treylon Burks in the draft. They went out and got Robert Woods this offseason, and they also went out and who else did they get? I think that's all the real key names that we need to talk about for the Titans. But one thing I said a while back in one of the first look videos that I did is we got to watch out for Ryan Tannehill, because when Ryan Tannehill was at his best, he was spreading the ball out. He wasn't force-feeding anyone. He was throwing it to the best available player. And when that happened, the Titans were a force to be reckoned with. He wasn't forcing it to A.J. Brown. He wasn't forcing it to Julio Jones. He wasn't forcing any big-name guys. I mean, A.J. Brown was a rookie making his name. So with guys like Robert Woods, Treylon Burks, Nick Westbrook-Akine, when those guys get out there, I think the ball is going to be spread out a lot more. So that's something to definitely keep an eye on as we continue this week 1 slate. But as of right now, I really don't have a lot of interest on the Titans side for receivers. The Giants got Kadarius Toney. He's been struggling with a hamstring injury. He looks like he's going to be probable for week 1 as of right now. And then you also got Sterling Shepard possibly returning. I don't know to what type of role he will be in. And then they drafted Wan'Dale Robinson. That's also somebody that I'll be super interested in. And I do like Daniel Jones at that 5,000 flat. If you watched my quarterback video, I went into pretty good detail on that. And then we move on to the Ravens and Jets. Not a lot of interest in this at all. I mean, Devin Duvernay is the only wide receiver that I would play on Baltimore. But I will note that they did acquire Demarcus Robinson from the Kansas... Oh, he was on the Kansas City Chiefs last year. The Raiders signed him and released him, and the Ravens picked him up, and he played in the last preseason game, and he looked pretty good out there with Baltimore. So maybe he's got a bigger role planned for him. We'll have to wait and see on that. For the Jets, I like Elijah Moore. I like Corey Davis. Not really interested in their rookie that they drafted. I think this rookie class is getting a little overhyped, and we'll just have to wait and see on him. When we get to the Arizona Cardinals, Kansas City Chiefs, we already discussed them. San Francisco taking on the Chicago Bears. Not very interested in stacking 49ers wide receivers, but Brandon Ayuk has had a tremendous, great preseason. I look for him to be a lot more involved as we head to week 1. And then also you got to remember Deebo Samuel still in town, and those are the two guys pretty much. And then for Chicago, Darnell Mooney, and then you got a cast of players that we really don't know a lot about. I mean, Byron Pringle looked pretty good with Patrick Mahomes, but is he going to look the same with Justin Fields throwing on the ball? And then you got the rookie Velus Jones, who I think they took in like the 4th or 5th round this past draft. He hasn't been practicing. He's been dealing with an undisclosed injury or personal issues, so not a lot of interest for me. When we get on to the Las Vegas Raiders, Chargers, we already discussed them. The Washington Commanders taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like Terry McLaurin a lot. Great value play. We'll be discussing some value plays here in a little bit, and he's one of them. Jahan Dotson, the rookie. I don't think this rookie class, like I was saying just a little while ago, I don't think this rookie class is going to be very good, but Jahan Dotson is coming into a wide receiver 2 role, and I think his role is getting a little overlooked just because of the team he's on, the situation that he's in. And now with all this running back drama with Ryan Robinson Jr., J.D. McKissick not being very healthy, and they don't really have many people left behind him. So that's something to keep an eye on as we're getting into this regular season, week 1. Looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars, though, there's a couple guys that I like. Christian Kirk, Marvin Jones, and I'm scary to say this, but Visca Chenault could also be somebody that we need to consider. With Doug Peterson as the head coach, I wouldn't be surprised if he somehow makes a revival. Miami Dolphins taking on the New England Patriots. The more I've been talking about these games, the more I've felt like I've been overlooking this game. With Tyreek Hill being the number 1 option, he's looked pretty good in the preseason with Tua. It's going to be hard not to want to play him a little bit. New England Patriots are just really good on defense, and I don't know if I can get there. And there's really no interest for me on the New England Patriots. Trayvon Thornton, the rookie they drafted in the 6th round, I believe, is out. I think he broke his collarbone. So that's going to promote guys like Kendrick Bourne, and I believe they still have Nelson Aguilar on the team. They're actually cutting players as we speak right now, so that's a name to keep an eye on. But, I mean, I don't have a lot of interest in this game as a whole. New Orleans Saints taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Michael Thomas is finally 100% healthy for the first time in almost 2 years. So I definitely want to see how he plays. I'm going to have some interest in him, along with Chris Olave. Don't really have a lot of interest in Jarvis Landry right now. Atlanta Falcons, Drake London. I mean, I got a little interest in him. I mean, if I'm playing a mini stack with the Saints and Falcons, I might throw him in there, but not a lot of interest. We already discussed the Vikings and Packers. Browns, Panthers. Don't have a lot of interest in Browns wide receivers. Maybe Donovan Peoples-Jones. Amari Cooper seems like he's not going to be happy about being in Cleveland until Deshaun Watson shows up and starts throwing them the ball. I don't really know what to think about this Browns receiving core with Jacoby Brissett, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Carolina Panthers, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, those are usual suspects. And Terrace Mitchell could be a guy that we need to look at. He's at like 3K flat. He was supposed to be taking over that Curtis Samuel role when Curtis Samuel signed with Washington. That's what they drafted him for. So maybe with Baker Mayfield, they can get him a little bit more involved. Baker Mayfield's good at getting a lot of wide receivers involved, so be curious to see what that's like. We already discussed Patriots, Dolphins. Yeah, so I mean, we pretty much already discussed most of these teams. Yeah, but I mean, you really want to attack these high implied totals and the high implied over-unders. But you also got to think about opportunity as well. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So wide receivers versus defense. When looking to select a wide receiver, we need to find defenses that gave up the most Draftkings points to opposing offenses. In this case, since it is week 1, we are using 2021 data and our best judgment from off-season moves. In the future, these stats will be updated for this season once we have a couple of weeks under our belt. A game to point out is the Packers versus Vikings. The Vikings were one of the worst defenses against opposing wide receivers last season. With that being said, a player we should consider rostering in week 1 is Allen Lazard, as he is projected to be Aaron Rodgers' new number 1 option now that Devontae Adams is gone. Here's a list of the worst to best defenses against wide receivers for DraftKings points averaged in 2021. So, some of the worst defenses against wide receivers were the Minnesota Vikings, who we discussed earlier. I really think Allen Lazard, Romeo Doubs. We're not really sure on the status of Christian Watson. I think he is going to play week 1, but it'll probably be in a limited role. Those 3 guys there have my main interest. And then for the New York Giants taking on the Tennessee Titans, they were the second worst defense against opposing wide receivers. So Kadarius Toney, Kenny Galladay, Sterling Shepard. We have heard reports that he's trying to make a return from injury by week 1. We'll have to wait and see on that. And then Wan'Dale Robinson, the rookie they drafted last offseason. So definitely got some options there. Darius Slayton's still on the team as of right now, but the Giants are looking for trade partners for Darius Slayton. So that's another thing to keep an eye on. Then we look at the New York Jets taking on the Baltimore Ravens. I don't take a lot of weight into the Baltimore Ravens being the third worst defense against wide receivers in fantasy football. Last year was just an odd year for the Baltimore Ravens as a whole, suffering a lot of injuries on both sides of the ball. But if you think that's something you need to take a chance on, I mean, the Jets got some pretty good wide receivers. We're just not exactly sure who's going to be throwing them the ball for week 1. Then the Arizona Cardinals were fourth worst defense. Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Nicole Hardman, Sky Moore. These are guys you should be considering playing if you're stacking with Patrick Mahomes taking on the Arizona Cardinals. The Jacksonville Jaguars were the 5th worst team against opposing wide receivers, and Terry McLaurin is a pretty good wide receiver. Probably one of my favorite cash game plays for week 1 would be Terry McLaurin. Jahan Dotson, someone else you should consider drafting. But other than that, I don't really have a lot of interest in the pass catchers for Washington. Jacksonville, you should be attacking them through the passing game. And then, funny enough, the Washington football team, or Commanders, are next on this list. Jacksonville has got some pretty good wide receivers. Got Christian Kirk. No matter what you think about Christian Kirk being overpaid, he's definitely an upgrade from what they had last season. Zay Jones, Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault. Definitely some options there. I think this is going to be a very sneaky shootout game that nobody's really talking about or hyping up. And those receiver options will help you make better lineups. Taking on the Saints and the Falcons, Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, those are my two main interests on the Saints. Falcons were awful against wide receivers last year, so let's keep that trend going. Colts taking on the Texans, Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, Paris Campbell. Those are your 3 wide receivers you should be attacking. You got the Chicago Bears taking on the 49ers. I just don't have a lot of interest in the Bears right now. We already talked about the Cardinals and Chiefs. Texans, Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins. Those are the only 2 wide receivers you should be having any type of interest in. Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Lions. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Those are your 2 main guys you should be considering. For the Vikings, you should be considering Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, K.J. Osborne. Tennessee Titans. I'm not having a lot of interest in this game, but if I had to pick someone, it'd be Robert Woods. Probably only Robert Woods. I'm not really on the Treylon Burks train just yet. And then San Francisco 49ers. I'm not on this game, but if I had to pick somebody, it would probably be Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel are your 2 main options there. So yeah, those are just some teams to talk about. If you should have some interest in wide receivers, these were the top 14, 16 teams against opposing defenses last year, so definitely keep an eye on that. Understanding projections is pretty simple. We have our base projection, ceiling, previous 4-game average, and our floor projections. We typically look for wide receivers that have a high ceiling for GPP plays, which is considered a boom or bust wide receiver, while a high floor wide receiver is a safe play meant for cash games. For example, Justin Jefferson is a perfect example of a cash game play. Due to the high floor, he is considered safe, while Tyreek Hill would be more of a GPP play with a high ceiling and low floor. Here's the rest of our current wide receiver projections. These are very likely to update before week 1 kicks off, so if any of this information is valuable to you, subscribe to my social media outlets for updates until the slate locks. We have a TikTok account, Instagram account, Patreon account, and of course, where you're watching right here on YouTube. So let's go ahead and look at the rest of these current wide receiver projections. Talk about the list. We got Justin Jefferson at the top as the best projected wide receiver with an 18.9 projection. It has a 29.2 ceiling and an 18.5 average with a 16.1 floor. Pretty high floor there. You got Devontae Adams with an 18-point projection, 31.1 ceiling, a 24.9 average, and a 16.2 floor. Jamar Chase at 7,100, third best play with a 17.7 projection, 27.9 ceiling, and a 19.2 average with a 6.3 floor, making him a very intriguing tournament play. Deebo Samuel, 7,400, 16.5 projection, 23.7 ceiling, 20-point average with a 14.9 floor. Not very much interest for Deebo Samuel for me. I feel like he's a tad too expensive. T. Higgins has a 15.6 projection and a 27.1 ceiling with a 16.7 average and a 9.3 floor. Tyreek Hill is at 6,800 with a 15.5 projection, 20.8 ceiling, 18.4 average, and a 5.9 floor, making him a very intriguing tournament play. Moving on to like Keenan Allen at 15.3 projection, 21.3 ceiling, a 16-point average, and a 13.7 floor. He's like really cringe to like possibly just GPP play, very close to being a non-cash game play, and probably won't be a cash game play by the time week 1 locks for me. AJ Brown, more than likely a GPP play only for me, but I will say he does have a pretty good ceiling, but that floor is just really low for me. But I like that price point at $6,400. Michael Pittman, probably going to be a real popular cash game play. I think deservingly so. He's correctly priced in my opinion. Brandon Cooks, 6,300. Always going to have to consider him as a cash game play. We just got to see how much this Texans offense got better in the offseason and how consistent it's going to be, because there was weeks where they were just real inconsistent. And it wasn't anything Brandon Cooks did wrong. It was just quarterback play or the game environment they were in. Deontay Johnson, probably my favorite cash game play on the whole entire slate. He just suffered a shoulder sprain. Coach Mike Tomlin has came out and said it's not a concern. If he heard it during the last preseason game they played when he caught that pass from Mitchell Trubisky, who it looks like Mitchell Trubisky has secured the starting role with just that pass alone. That was an amazing pass. But Deontay Johnson sprained his shoulder. Mike Tomlin came out and said that Johnson would have probably finished the game if it were to be a regular season game. So they were just being cautious due to it being a preseason game. Look, Deontay Johnson's my favorite cash game play due to price point, projection. His ceiling's pretty good. He has a good average and a good floor. Definitely someone I'm keeping an eye on as we get further on into the week. Hopefully this injury might scare some people off of Deontay Johnson. Jalen Waddle at 6,400, definitely just a GPP play for me, even though his floor is high. I don't think this is taken in consideration of what Tyreek Hill is going to bring to the table. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on, and I don't think Tua is going to be throwing the ball 30 to 40 times a game. I think it'll be somewhere in between that 15 to 25 range. So someone's going to take a step back. We already know Mike Gesicki's not going to be in the slot as much as he was last year. I think Jalen Waddle is going to be taking a step back as well. So I don't have a lot of interest in Jalen Waddle. Obviously a GPP play only for me. Marquise Brown, also a GPP play only for me, just due to the inconsistency. And we just got to see what he looks like with Kyler Murray. Mike Williams at $6,600, also only a GPP play for me. Look, there was some slate breaking weeks with Mike Williams last year. I'm hoping he can do it again this year. He's projected pretty low for that price point. He's at $6,600, and he's only projected to do 13.9 Draftkings points. He only has a 15.3 ceiling. He averaged about 13.6 points last season, and his floor is 8.6. So this is screaming GPP play for me. Terry McLaurin. Look, I thought I was really going to like him for cash game plays. It turns out Deontay Johnson is the better cash game play. Even A.J. Brown's a better cash game play than Terry McLaurin. $6,500 just seems a little too expensive for him for the season that he had last year. I know it was because of inconsistent quarterback play, but he's only projected to score 13.7 Draftkings points. And his ceiling is only 15.1. He has an average of 10.1. and a floor of 4.9. I know this is based off of last season's stats, but definitely real scary. I don't think I'm going to be playing Scary Terry, no pun intended. But yeah, this is definitely, the price is going to have to drop on him for me unless he just really outperforms his salary week 1. We move on to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Look, he looks to be a pretty good cash game play. At $6,100, projected to do a 13.4. I would way rather just play Deontay Johnson, though. There's some inconsistency there. I mean, DJ Chark could end up being the number 1 wide receiver for that team. A lot of uncertainty. No interest in Amari Cooper. Adam Thielen is way too cheap. Definitely someone to consider in cash games. If you don't want to play Michael Pittman, I think Adam Thielen would be a good replacement. But for me, he's more of a GPP play. DJ Moore, looking pretty good. This is based off of last year's stats. So I don't think he's ranked high enough. At 12.7 projected points with a $6,000 salary. He's got a 14 points ceiling with 11.6 average, and he has an 8.4 floor. I'm definitely going to consider playing him in tournaments. Hunter Renfrow, 12.5. Yeah, these are all really based off of last year's stats. I don't think I'm going to have a lot of interest in Hunter Renfrow for week 1. Possibly just a tournament play for me. Rashad Bateman, I'm going to have some interest in cash games just because I think he's going to be really popular due to the game environment that the Ravens are going to be in. And he's going to be one of Lamar Jackson's standalone stacking options. Michael Thomas, he's strictly a tournament play for me. We got to see what he looks like out on the field in real football speed and real crucial game environments. We've seen him some in the offseason. He's ran some routes. He's looked pretty good. But yeah, just a tournament play for me only. Same thing with Juju Smith-Schuster. He's also only a tournament play for me. And bottom out this list, definitely not the last person to talk about. If you want to look at the rest of this page on my Patreon, go ahead and follow that. But Darnell Mooney at $5,700, he would be a good cash game play if they weren't playing the San Francisco 49ers, but I just don't have a lot of interest in Darnell Mooney. I feel like the Bears aren't going to be very good week 1, and his price could drop because of it, and it'll be better to attack him when his price is a little lower. But yeah, probably a fringe tournament play for me. When looking at projections versus salary, that creates player value. That value will help either increase the player's interest or decrease it depending on price point and matchup. For example, Michael Pittman is at a great value due to his price point, projection, and game environment, while Sammy Watkins is a bad value due to price point, projection, and game environment. Here's the rest of our top value plays. Just to know, this is very likely to update before week 1 kicks off, so it will benefit you to subscribe to my social media outlets for updates until the Slate locks. We have a TikTok, Instagram, of course a YouTube channel, and a Patreon where I charge a small fee to keep y'all updated on projections, ownership, and other things of that nature. So take a look at all these platforms and maybe subscribe, hit a like button, hit some kind of button for me if you enjoy this content. These, of course, are not all the value plays that I'm interested in on this slate, but here's some of the top 20 plus here. Michael Pittman at $5,500 looks to be the best value play on this slate. Rondell Moore sitting right behind him. Actually, they're identical value at 2.65 as of right now. So those are two guys you should definitely be interested in cash games, and just plays all around. Jamar Chase, 7,100 at a 2.49 value. Deontay Johnson, one of my favorite cash game plays in all of week 1, is at 2.45. DJ Moore is at a 2.43 value. Kadarius Toney, 2.41. Brandon Cooks also at a 2.41. Marquise Brown at a 2.37. Michael Thomas at a 2.37. Tyreek Hill at a 2.37. So those are some guys that around the same price point that you need to consider playing. T. Higgins, really like him. Really like Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, Devontae Adams, Terry McLaurin. Jalen Waddle's up on this list. He's kind of a fringe play for me. Paris Campbell, we discussed him earlier. He's one of the best 3K plays on the slate. Deebo Samuel, 7,400, looks decent. Elijah Moore at 5,100. If you want a run back option for that Baltimore game, you're definitely going to have to consider playing Elijah Moore at that price point. And Randall Cobb rounds out this list at the bottom with 3,400 as 2.18 player value. So yeah, these are just some of the top value plays. There's a lot more to look at on this page. If you look at my Patreon, all this will be on there. But yeah, as of right now, really got some interest in a lot of these players that are listed. Kind of waiting on the updated projections for like guys like Romeo Doubs, because I think he'll trump the value of Randall Cobb. But other than that, this is pretty accurate value. Every week there's players that are completely overpriced, or there are players that are really underpriced. For week 1, Draftkings typically prices players a lot lower to get interest from casual players to get the opportunity to get any player that they want in their lineup. However, Draftkings messed up big time. Who likes to go shopping for a good bargain? Or who likes to go buy low in the stock market? The same thing applies here. There are 4 wide receivers that are tremendously underpriced based off of last year's performance. For example, Jamar Chase is 7,100 on this week's slate, while in week 18 he was at 8,300. That's 1,200 cheaper than he was in the last regular season game he played in last season. That's a huge misprice that you should consider to exploit in week 1, because the price may never be that low for the rest of the season. Here are the rest of the overpriced and underpriced Draftkings wide receivers. This will be updated weekly on my Patreon. We're obviously not going to go over every name on this list. I just want to go over some key names that I feel like are extremely important to this slate. Start off with Deontay Johnson, who's possibly my favorite wide receiver on this whole entire slate. He's at $6,000 this week. In week 18 of last year, he was at $7,600. That's a huge whopping $1,600 discount for one of the top premier wide receivers in our league. Then we move on to Adam Thielen at $5,400. He was at $6,900 when the season ended in week 18. That's a $1,500 discount for somebody that is heavily involved in his offense. Devontae Adams is someone else, $8,100 this week. He was at $9,400 last week. Now I understand his price dropping was mainly due to the fact that he went from Aaron Rodgers to now playing with Derek Carr, which is understandable, but that's a $1,300 difference for one of the best wide receivers in the league. Jamar Chase is another one we need to talk about here at $7,100 this week. He was at $8,300 in week 18 of last year, which is a $1,200 difference, extreme difference. And honestly, I think he's priced really wrong this week. He should be priced with Justin Jefferson and Devontae Adams around that range, but he's extremely underpriced. Tyreek Hill's also somebody that's extremely discounted this week at $6,800. He was at $8,000 week 18 of last year. Understandably so. He's got Patrick Mahomes throwing him the ball when he was on the Chiefs, and now he has Tua Tagovailoa throwing him the ball in Miami, which that could be the reason for the price decrease. but $1,200 price difference for Tyreek Hill is huge. T. Higgins at $6,100. He was at $7,200 last year. All these Cincinnati Bengals players are extremely cheap this week. We talked about Joe Burrow in the quarterback segment on the last video we made. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are also extremely underpriced. T. Higgins at $6,100 this week. He was at $7,200 the previous week 18, and that's a $900 difference. So we definitely need to buy high on that. Christian Kirk, another guy we need to consider. $5,100 for this week 1, and the last week he was in week 18 was $6,000. That's a $900 difference. Jacoby Myers, not a really big deal. Robert Woods, not a very big deal. We don't know what type of role he's going to be in this offense. AJ Green's someone to mention. He was at $5,400 in week 18 of last year. And he's now at $4,600. That's an $800 difference. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's at $6,100 when he was at $6,800. I think that's actually fair to say because they actually went out and got some more talented wide receivers around him. So he's not going to be the only mouth to feed in Detroit. Hunter Renfro's price discount is well deserved now that Devontae Adams is playing with the Raiders. So not a huge discount there that I really want to buy low on. Deebo Samuel, he's at a pretty big discount, which understandably so now that he has Trey Lance throwing him the ball. A.J. Brown, someone else that has a pretty big discount. He was at $7,000 flat in week 18 of last year. And now that's a $600 discount. Now that he's at $6,400 in week 1 of this year. And Amari Cooper, he's just in a totally different situation. A less talented quarterback. He had Dak throwing the ball last year, but he was at $6,500 the previous week, and now he's at $5,900. That's a $600 difference. And obviously, there's a lot more to talk about, but if you want to go visit my Patreon page, all this and much more will be on there. Even more price discounts and overpriced players. We didn't even get to the overpriced players because this list is so long. But yeah, those are some key guys that I'm keeping a look on for week 1. Now we're here to talk about our wide receiver interest. Here at the Yeses, I'm going to just point out some key names here that I have a lot of interest in. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, Michael Pittman, Kadarius Toney, Rondale Moore. Those are my key guys that I have huge interest in, but all these guys should be heavily considered. Cash games, tournament plays, things of that nature. All these guys are worthy. Then we get to the X's, which means mainly just GPP plays. Deebo Samuel tops off the list with Keenan Allen, Tyreek Hill, Mike Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Hunter Renfrow, Darnell Mooney, Robert Woods, Allen Lazard, Devontae Smith, Adam Thielen, Elijah Moore. And we skip a couple here. Tyler Boyd, someone else that I'm kind of interested in GPPs only. Robbie Anderson, DJ Chark, someone that's been real hyped up for Detroit in the last few years. But yeah, other than that, it's a small list of interests, but we got a pretty long list of no's. I'm going to go over a couple key guys. Jalen Waddle, Amari Cooper, Jameson Williams. We're not sure if he's going to play week 1. It doesn't look very likely. Brandon Ayuk, I'm strongly reconsidering him. We still got some time to think about that. Christian Watson, his playing time is uncertain, even if he does play at all in week 1. So that's something to keep an eye on. Don't have a lot of interest in Treylon Burks or Jarvis Landry. Might move KJ Osborne to the X section. Nick Westbrook at Kine. Don't really have interest in him. Nor Sammy Watkins. Terrace Marshall just seems a little too expensive to me. Traquan Smith is injured. Kendrick Bourne, I might move to the interest now that Traquan Thornton is out. Darius Slayton could be traded before the end of this week. Zay Jones, no interest. Alec Pierce, no interest. No interest in Devin Duvernay. But yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Here are my interests as of right now. If you want to subscribe to my Patreon, this will be updated about 2 or 3 times leading up to the week 1 lock, possibly more than that. This is my first time actually doing a whole page like this. This is going to basically be a cheat sheet where you're going to have my interest in quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, defenses, all of that. So really consider taking a look at my Patreon. I'm about to post all this to it. So yeah, hopefully you guys take a look at it. Thanks for watching us here at the Losers Win Again Fantasy Football channel. If you enjoyed this content, hit that like, hit that subscribe, and the notification bell to get more content just like this. My Patreon provides all these sheets we've discussed today and much more for a small $5 fee a month. Drop down in the comments to ask me about it. Subscribe to my social media outlets for updates until the slate locks. And as always, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.